a demonic possession, the dangers of spirit guides, past life regressions, and more on this week's Spirit Answers podcast. So Luke, from what I understand, your experience with the church and Christianity, as you started off in your upbringing, is kind of similar to other people's experiences. It seems like, just from what you shared in your testimony, maybe your initial experience with Christianity was more about the rule keeping as opposed to like a relationship with Jesus. What's interesting about your story too is that you're the son of two people in the church. So if you could kind of share a little bit of both those aspects for our listeners, I think that'd be a great way to kick us off.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of a funny story and confusing, but I am the son of a priest and a nun, but it's off-brand Catholic, so they're allowed to get married and have kids. They believe Protestant doctrine, but they practice all the sacraments and all of the traditions of the Catholic Church. Everyone in the church grew up Catholic, and they liked what they did, but they didn't like what they believed, so they just kind of made their own thing. And so, yeah, I literally had a church in my house. They converted our garage to a chapel, and I would walk down the hall and go to church. And yeah, like you said, it was, you got to go to church. You got to do all of these things. And it was about doing things. And I didn't like that. And it kind of turned me off, obviously, as it might. I still believed, at least I think I believed the gospel to a certain point, but it was definitely still a lot of, you have to do this to, progress in your faith, basically. And it wasn't ever I never was told you need to have a communication relationship with Jesus. You just, you go to church, you sing the songs, you do the Sunday school, and that's what being a Christian is. And you do good things to other people. That's what being a Christian is. And that was really my experience with Christianity at that point. That's how I knew it.
So at some point then, I take it that was not a really fulfilling experience for you, at least at the time. And I would think that then played a role in your delving into other types of spiritualities. Is that right?
Yeah. Basically in middle school and high school, I was like, yeah, I don't know if this is true. I don't know. This was just forced upon me. I didn't choose this. I don't know what's what. And basically I just said, Jesus is still my savior, but he's not my Lord. I didn't care about what the Bible said about sin, and just went my own way and did my own thing in high school. Just kind of went crazy.
Yeah. And again, I think that's pretty normal. I think that when you're looking at anything, not just Christianity, anything any type of religion or any kind of way of living, I think that it's normal to, if you're kind of just doing it for the rule keeping, or just trying to hit a certain amount of check boxes, make sure that you're checking certain things off, that at some point you kind of want to maybe experiment with something else, or kind of there's a rebellious attitude, I think, that comes out of that. And you just want to see what else is out there. And I think that is so common, especially as it relates to what we're talking about right here, people that maybe start off in Christianity and start exploring other spiritual paths. So as it relates to your story in particular, then how did you find out about this event that you relay in your testimony? If you could go ahead and just kind of share what that is also.
Yeah. So the event is the idea in New Age philosophy that once everyone in the world has a certain consciousness, once the world meets a threshold of, a high consciousness, there's going to be some people with low consciousness. There's some people with high consciousness. And once the threshold is passed where there's enough people with a high consciousness, that God will transfer people with a high consciousness to 5D Earth in the fifth dimension. Right now, in the third dimension, everything's 3D. God has made a fifth dimensional Earth for the high consciousness people, high frequency, and basically the way you get a high consciousness in the New Age is eat vegetarian, do good things, do white magic instead of black magic. All like just, it's all about love and light is how they describe it. And so it's all about doing and earning your way and trying to, push away your bad by doing good. And we know that doesn't really work. But so the way I got into that was late nights on YouTube. Many things can come of that. But I just started I think it started with it started with Inner Earth, basically. And then it just progressed, and it was like one thing led to another, led to another. And all of a sudden I found myself in the New Age believing it and getting ready for the event and trying to do my best to work my way to God and the New Age God.
Yeah, and again, I think that's pretty normal too for many people that have these experiences. It kind of starts off with something a little gradual. A YouTube video here or there that kind of explains maybe like certain energies or energy healing or something as it relates to, like in your experience, the event, which kind of, as you allude to also in your YouTube testimony, can even draw in a Christian because it builds off of their experience and their understanding of what the rapture is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's that familiarity aspect. There's some familiarity there that is just comfortable enough for people, as especially if they're looking into it for the first time. But there's also an element to it, I think, that is appealing because there's a newness there, and it's almost like, I think a lot of times what happens, unfortunately, like in Christianity, especially, is that there's not as much of a focus, as we were talking about at the beginning, of that relationship, the relational aspect, or with Christ, or a spirit-led aspect that is going in these churches. And sometimes I think that the outside world can kind of view that as people, as Christians, as people that are, one, either kind of dull and boring, or two, as people that are just kind of maybe just afraid of the afterlife and want to make sure that they're doing the right thing so they can go to the right side of the afterlife. And so I think that what you're describing, it just hits home for me in the aspect that it just makes me think about it's just appealing enough and different enough, and there's enough in there that is familiar, that it all kind of combines together to make it this kind of edgy, new, appealing thing for people as they're looking into it. Does that kind of relate to how your experience was?
Exactly. Yeah. The whole reason why I left Christianity for New Age was because it was new, because they said, I can manifest my own reality because I am my own creator and I have all these powers, and there's like the spirit world. And I was like, oh, I never heard that in the church. That's crazy. How can I have the power? And I was just, I definitely believed in God at this point. I just didn't know who he was.
Right.
And so if these people were talking about real experiences with the supernatural, I'm like all for it. Because I want to know the truth. I just wanted to know what's what. And so that's what kind of led me. And it was like you said, it's close enough. Like they hold up Jesus on a pedestal, but it's not the Jesus. It's a New Age Jesus, and he's held up next to all these other random people, spiritual teachers and things like that. And it's, like you said, the event kind of sounds like the rapture. Like I literally grew up in the church. Like literally, there's a church in my house, and I got tricked by this thing. So it's close. Yeah. It's so deceiving. How well it's done.
Yeah, 100%. And another aspect of as it relates to your story is the tie into, I can't remember her name, but there's a woman that started it, and there's the element of past life regression as well, right? So if you could kind of tell our listeners what her role in this, because I think she may have started it, and then how that tied into the past life regression as well.
Yeah, there's this lady who came up with a technique, I guess you would call it, for hypnosis. She called it quantum healing hypnosis techniques or something. And for like 10 years or so, she would just go to people's past lives and like put them in a hypnotic state and go to their past lives and access their subconscious and open them up and like remove them of their self so she can like go back, I guess, and talk to the spirit of the person who's being hypnotized, and let that spirit tell the story of their old lives. And that's how she advertised it. And then all of a sudden, one time, there was a new spirit, a new being who came through. And it's weird because she said it was the same voice every time she would do it. After a certain point, the same voice would come through no matter who she was hypnotizing. It was the same voice, and it would always say, "That's not important anymore. That doesn't matter now. What matters now is going to 5D Earth and raising your frequency and getting ready for the event." And that's where the whole event idea came from, was her and this spirit working together to, preach this, you need to get ready for the event. And yeah, that's kind of how it started.
And it's another thing I want to touch on real quick as it relates to past life regression, which can be very, very, very deceptive. And I also, I got into this as well, is that a lot of times people have really good, quote, success with like past life regression. There's a lot of therapists that will implement past life regression into their practice. And so there's kind of the appeal there is just the fact that you're going into your, quote, past life, I think is really appealing for people and thinking about what it was like in a previous life. And a lot of times these past lives seem to be so, it's almost always like you're somebody of some kind of high status. And I think that people like that. I think that they like kind of the appeal, the magic appeal of it. And then the fact that when I was researching this, a lot of people seem to, they would experience some kind of a trauma in their life at some point, which is probably why they got into therapy in the first place. And this past life regression supposedly helped heal their trauma. And as we know, there's a couple things to that. One is, as Christians, like we believe that that the enemy can masquerade as being of light, and there can be some quote healings that happen to continue to pull the veil over people's eyes and continue to deceive them. That's one thing. And another thing is that what's different about this past life regression healing that happens, and maybe somebody that's healed when they apply the truth that's found in the Word of God, is that a lot of times these healings are kind of like on a surface level healing, and they don't really access like the inner workings of a person. They don't really change the spiritual makeup of them or the emotional makeup of them. So it's almost like a Band-Aid, and doesn't really solve anything. It kind of relieves the temporary pain of what it is that the person is going through, but then it almost seems like it still leaves that person open for other events, and obviously not every single event, a traumatic event that somebody goes to therapy for, is their fault. But I just think that there's a little bit of a difference between true healing as found, as we both believe in Christianity, and as some of these other, I think, spiritual healings. Yeah. So I think I just wanted to say that because I think that plays into how the deceptive factor again, and that there's a lot of moving parts here that are just so appealing, but also there seems to be some validity to it. So I think it's understandable that people would fall into the trap of believing it.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it's part of it. It's like, there's supernatural things. It's real because demons have power too. But it's temporary. It doesn't actually heal you. It just like leads you on to go to the next appointment, and go to the next appointment, and go to the next appointment. And
right.
Yeah, it's not real. It's real as in you experience something, but it's not real as in it doesn't actually do anything for you except lead you on further.
Exactly. Exactly. So where does that? So you started to research a little bit more about her and some of these
Mhm.
experiences. So where did that leave you now in terms of how did all that relate to what was going on in your life?
Basically, I was getting deeper and deeper into it, and I had to keep doing more and more things that they were telling me. I was joining Facebook groups to get support and learn more about it. And at this point, I was in school, and I was using this group and like whatever they would tell me to like help me with life. And they told me I got to contact my spirit guides and basically through meditation, just reach out to the spirit world and ask for guidance. And so I like at this point in my life, I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I was doing like pre-nursing classes and hoping that it would work out. And um, basically, I would be up all night learning about the new age and these spirits and how to contact them. And I would wake up like with 3 hours of sleep and have to take an exam. And I'd basically be like sitting in front of my exam, like not knowing anything on this test. And I'd be like basically praying to these spirit guides again, asking for help and answers. And I would get A's on tests I never studied for, just straight guessing. I'm like, don't know that, don't know that, don't know that. And just like all the way down the test, I guess the whole thing.
That's insane.
Wow, I just bombed that test. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I would get it back and it would be an A. And
Yeah.
that happened twice.
Yeah. That's absolutely crazy.
That
And
happened.
go ahead. You said it happened more than once.
Yeah. Because
Wow.
when I started, it was in the summer and it came all the way through the fall semester. And it happened 2 times that I just didn't study for a test and got an A because of that.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And I know another aspect of this that you had relayed in your video testimony video is that you also were getting some physical benefits as well, like when it
Mhm.
came to what you're doing in the weight room. Can you kind of describe some of that?
Yeah. So at that point, I'd been lifting for like 4 or 5 years, and I was stuck at this weight on bench press, and it was very slow. And then one week, I just started doing 50 pounds more than I was able to the week before, and it was just like, that's not possible. It's not realistic. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Especially like maybe if you like just started lifting and you see that fast growth, but I've been lifting for a while and that just does not happen. And I just when I was benching, I just felt like this electricity in my muscles, like this extra energy and strength, and it was very odd. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm like a superhero. And it's like kind of like in Mark 5, when the demon possessed man, he breaks out of the shackles. No one can hold him down. He's too strong, and he's like some skinny naked man out in the wilderness, like not a beefy guy, but I'm not beefy either, and I was able to do things that I should not have been able to done physically as well as mentally.
Yeah, and that kind of lends itself to because I know there's always skeptics out there that are wondering, well, is this psychological? Like, what
Mhm.
is really going on here? Well, I think when we can look at your story right now, there's already a few really interesting things that I would think that are more than just coincidence. I think it'd be very like mathematically unlikely that you could
Mhm.
all of a sudden get these correct test results without studying for the test a couple times.
Mhm.
You have this supernatural strength in the weight room, which is absolutely just incredible. And then just what kind of like what we were talking about before, that you had by way of your research and in mine as well, we had come to the conclusion that the people that have been through some of these past life regression experiences were finding some kind of success there in terms of quote healings. And so there definitely was something more here than just coincidence. It would seem like on the surface level.
Mhm.
And that's not even to say like you also in your testimony video you touched on a little bit of automatic writing, right? Can you kind of
Mhm.
talk a little bit about what happened there?
Yeah. So I was basically channeling these spirits and meditating and opening myself up to them and just say like I had a social media outlet at that point and I was like sharing messages about the new age. I was like, yo, this is crazy. I'm having all these spiritual experiences. This is proof. There's proof for this. This is real. Like you gotta check this out. you got to be ready for the event. And I would just like get on my notes app on my phone, go into this state where I would let these spirits come in, like speak through me, and my thumbs would just move. I would get telepathic messages put in my head, and not thinking, typing without thinking. And just, I'm like, yeah, this is, I was aware of what was happening, but I wasn't in control of my thumbs nor what was going through my head. And yeah, I'll just share that on social media and be like, yo, this is crazy. And then it led to me ultimately telling my parents about it, because I was like, this is too crazy. I can't hide it from them anymore. And I knew that they were gonna have some backlashes.
Yeah. At this point too, how far into these experiences were you? Like how much time had passed since you had first started getting into this?
It happened so fast. It was probably like 4 or 5 months.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
that's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think too about some of the allure again is just the power that is promised to you, and just it's almost like you have some superpowers. So but it makes me think too about your parents, and I wonder, like, just with your background, at this point you said that you had revealed the automatic writing to them. Did they know anything else about your story at this point?
Not really. They didn't know like what I was doing, but they knew what I believed, because this girl who did the hypnosis, she'd say, I'm a Christian, but Jesus is just a prophet. He's one of many, and hell's not real, and there's any way to God, and no one's wrong. And I was like, yeah, I believe that, because she said she's a Christian and she's having all this experience. And I was like, I'm just a New Age Christian. And basically I was telling them that, and that probably put a red flag up for them.
Yeah. And at that point, I know you mentioned in your video that was that kind of then the catalyst that led you to believe that some of this was not as it seemed then when it came to your experiences, like some of the deception started to make itself known.
Yeah, my parents were like very alarmed, I guess, as they should be. And my mom was like doing research about, New Age to Jesus testimonies, people coming out of the New Age to find Jesus, and sending me those, and sending me videos of how this lady was a false prophet, and sending me Bible verses, like you mentioned earlier. 2 Corinthians 11:14 says, don't be surprised when Satan and his angels disguise themselves as angels of light and preach righteousness. And I was like, angels of light? I'm talking to light beings. New Agers say love and light. Kind of suspicious. And so, yeah, that definitely, like, all those videos and those verses, and realizing that this lady like preached the opposite of what I knew my entire life before this. Like the foundational Christian belief is that Jesus died on the cross for your sins. He is the only way. He's the only one who paid the fine that we owe. We can't earn our way to God, like New Age says. We can't get to God. We need Jesus, and he is the only way. There is no other way, or else then he wouldn't have come to die if there was another way.
Right.
And that scared me, and that put the fear of God in me, that if I'm wrong about this is forever. So I was like in panic mode at this point when my parents brought that stuff up.
And so you're in panic mode, and all of a sudden then, is it just like an overnight change for you? You just all of a sudden start renouncing what you've been doing, or is it more of a gradual thing? How did you end up getting out of it and getting back into your Christian roots?
Yeah, so I was talking to my mom about it, and I was like, she's like, do you know for certain that this is true? And I was like, no, I don't know for certain that this is true, but there's so much evidence for it. And she's like, okay, pray to Jesus Christ of Nazareth and say his full name out like that for the truth. I was like, okay, fine, I will, whatever, ha ha ha. Mom, silly mom. And so I prayed, because I really did want to know the truth, and I prayed hard. It's probably the hardest I've prayed in my life, was for the truth, to Jesus Christ of Nazareth. And on the third night, I prayed for 3 nights, and on the third day of praying, I was still going to church. I was because in New Age you can't be wrong, so I guess I'll just be a Christian for now, because that's what my family is, and I'll go to church with them, because it didn't really matter either way. And when I went to church that day, it was so odd because I felt empty. I felt like I wasn't there. Like, it's not like I was tired and like, oh, it's going over my head, I'm not paying attention. It was, I am not in this building right now. I am not here. I didn't feel anything for the worship or for the message. And then as soon as I got out, I was like, oh, back to my normal self. It was so odd. And I was like, okay, something is wrong. Something is very wrong. At that point, I knew something was wrong. And then that night, I went home and on a random hunch decided to look up what Luciferianism was. And the definition that came up for Luciferianism was exactly what I was doing. Like, raise your frequency. You are your own God. You are your own creator. Do what you want. All of these things that I was doing. And I was like, bruh.
Yeah.
You know what Luciferianism is? It's worshiping Lucifer as God, and Lucifer is Satan's name before he became a fallen angel. When he was an angel, his name was Lucifer. And it's worshiping Lucifer or Satan as God. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got played. And I looked over at my dad, who was sitting next to me, and I was like, Dad, I just got deceived by demons. He's like, what? I said, yeah, you need to pray for me right now. So he came over and he started praying for me, and I just like leaned back in my chair and was like, what did I do? And the moment I started praying to Jesus and repenting and saying sorry, and I lost complete control of my body. My fists were balled up. I couldn't bend my arms. I couldn't move my mouth or my lips. Every muscle in my body was contracted so tight that I couldn't move. And I couldn't speak out loud because of that. And I was like, okay, why is this happening? And I was scared, and it hurt so bad. I was sore for like the next 3 days. Every muscle in my body was contracted so tight. It was like I just did like a super hard workout.
Wow.
It was only a 15-minute event that this occurred over, and I could feel every cell in my body start to vibrate like violently. But like if you've ever sat in a massage chair, that times 10, except you can feel it in every cell in your body, not just like an overall general feeling. It's impossible to explain, really, but that's the best I can do. And it was like whatever is inside of me wants out. They are like freaking out in there, and they were basically, at that point, I realized I was going through a demonic possession. And when I opened myself up in meditation and I let spirits inside of me, I wanted them to guide me, like, like a guardian angel watch over me and lead me.
Right.
But I let them inside of me unknowingly, and I was going through a demonic possession.
Incredible.
And I started repenting to Jesus, and then 15 minutes later it was over, and then I got baptized, went to church, and my life is completely different.
So just going back real quick then to that experience that happened in church, when you said that it felt different during church, was that had you been going to church then before then, even throughout your new age experiences?
Mm-hmm.
You had been? Okay.
Yep.
So, but so it sounds like the catalyst for that experience of that feeling different was you had started to reach out in prayer to God, right? That was, and that kind of like, it changed your state of being, and it made it so that it just, something was not sitting right with you.
Yeah, I asked God for help, and then the things around me looked different.
And how so?
I was just, the things that I thought were good and were from God, I was like questioning them. And when when I went to church, I was like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be, but I felt nothing, and I knew something was wrong on the inside. Like, why did I shut down when I go to church? Why do these, like, I don't know, are these spirit guides not happy that I'm going to church? I thought, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and interesting right there too, because we've been talking so much about some of the supernatural parts of the New Age and other spiritualities besides Christianity. But I think that in and of itself, right there, that event at church speaks well to a supernatural event that led you back to your relationship with Christ, because it was your action of reaching back out and praying to God and asking for the truth that put you into a different state of mind that it sounds like that most likely would not have happened if you wouldn't have done that. And so because I want to highlight that, because I think sometimes Christianity can get kind of a bad rap in this, quote, the spiritual or the paranormal community, because there's not as much of the razzle dazzle type of events that you might see in other spiritualities. But I think that right there is important to highlight, like I said, just because it shows that by your actions and your desire to know the truth, you were able to kind of come back to Christianity and get saved as a result of that, and through that altered state of mind through church. You knew something was off. You knew something was not right as it related to your experiences before. So just really interesting. And obviously the experience with your dad, I mean, that's crazy. And I wonder too, like what your dad's reaction was throughout all that, because as someone who is a man of the church and comes from a church background, I would still think he had never seen anything like this, right?
Yeah, he was surprisingly chill through it all. He's just like, keep breathing, and he was like praying over me and like trying to keep me calm as possible. And obviously I was like in pain, and like tears were falling down my face. I didn't really know what was going on. I just knew I lost control of my body.
Yeah.
And am in pain all of a sudden when I start repenting. So now I don't want to make this sound like it hurt, like Jesus hurt me. It was the demons in me were pissed that I went to Jesus, and they didn't want me to. And the whole reason I had all those powers and those abilities that I shouldn't have had were because they wanted to lead me on. They would give me anything I wanted. I truly believe that they would have given me any ability, any power, any fame, money, status, whatever, anything in this world, anything that is, that the world cares about.
Yeah.
They will give you, as long as you stay away from the true Jesus, the biblical Jesus, because there's New Age Jesus, and they're okay with that Jesus, just not the Jesus of the Bible. And as soon as I went to Jesus, they got pissed. They just wanted to lead me on and lead me astray with all these powers and knowledge and things that are cool and that are real, but they don't. They just lead you to more lies, and they lead you to hell. Ultimately, if I would have died, I said Jesus was just some other guy. I didn't believe the gospel. If I would have died, I would have gone to hell.
Yeah.
They had me.
Yeah. So powerful. And it makes me think about too, your experience there. Sleep paralysis, as people are coming out of the new age, a lot of times that'll happen to people, and they are unable to move, unable to speak. And usually it'll happen, from what I understand, it's happened to me while you're sleeping. And it doesn't usually last, I don't think, that as long as yours, but there's definitely some overlap there. And there was another person that I had on the podcast as well. His name is Mark Hunneman. He's the author of a book called Seeing Ghosts Through God's Eyes. And I'm not sure if that podcast is already out, by the time that this one comes out, but he relayed an experience while he was writing that book. And he said that while he was at his computer, he was typing at his computer, typing the book. And all of a sudden he felt paralyzed, like a sleep paralysis episode. And this like demonic voice came out of nowhere and told him, and said, "Mark, you need to stop writing this book," and then said an expletive to him. So your experience there really overlaps, I think, with a lot of other people's experiences as it relates to suspected demonic encounter. It seems like a lot of times people are put into kind of a paralysis type of state, and they're unable to speak, unable to move. But I never heard it. Part of it too is probably because I'm not as well versed in this part of the spiritual realm. I had never heard of an experience that had hurt somebody like that. And for 15 minutes like that, that sounds, like you said, maybe just a straight up like, maybe you really were possessed. You were possessed by demons. And it sounds like a very extreme example of some of these paralysis episodes.
Yeah, I've had sleep paralysis before.
Yeah.
That was not like this. Sleep paralysis, you're in bed, but you can't move, but your muscles aren't contracted, you're not like super tight and tense, and you're just kind of like there, like, but you can't move. You're kind of like limp and you can't move. This was different. It was like I was like solid as a rock. I couldn't move. I was so tense I couldn't wiggle my toes because of how contracted they were. I couldn't. It was just like something. It was something else. It wasn't like sleep paralysis. Something else happened. Yeah.
Wow. Just crazy. And it makes me think about my own experience too. When I wasn't constrained or anything like that, or I didn't have any muscle, like I wasn't in any type of pain like that. And I'm obviously sure I already had some sleep paralysis episodes, but I just remember when I started to find out that maybe there was something more to these other spiritualities in the New Age in general. I was like that first kind of instant I started to pray for like 5 minutes, and it was just that it was a feeling of just this horrible like dread and just like foreboding. And it was like 5 minutes. I've never had to pray for 5 minutes straight. I started praying to God. Because even while I was in the New Age, I would still pray to God or the universe, and I was just praying to God and just and asking for whatever it was that was around me to get away from me. So it's obviously not the exact same type of experience that you're describing there, but just this. It's like as soon as the wool is pulled out from over your eyes and you kind of get a semblance of the truth, the enemy is obviously not happy, and these are some. It just really speaks again to a lot of people's experiences, including ours, that there's just a lot of times traumatic, either one or several traumatic incidences that take place a lot of times physically, as it relates to going back to Christianity or reaching out to Jesus or God. So just crazy stuff there. But I think it's awesome too, again, that your dad was so calm and just kind of stayed there as a firm presence there for you and was supportive and just kept praying. And I think it sounds like he did all the right things, and just kudos to him for doing that. I think a lot of us would like to say that we would have remained as calm, and it just so I think again, just so awesome that he was able to remain so probably fixated on the Lord and his power, and was not fearful. Yeah, that's amazing. And so at that point, then, did you have any other? Because you mentioned that you had sleep paralysis. What was it like then, as it relates to your testimony for kind of returning back to Christianity? Then was that moment enough? It was like, okay, I'm completely done with this. Did you keep experimenting with any of these other like spiritualities? Kind of take us through what happened next.
Yeah. Obviously it's very hard to come out of the New Age because you are your own God. You can't be wrong. There's all this proof around you. So overnight I was definitely like, Jesus is the only way, but I still held on to things from the New Age and ideas and, things that I didn't know were like not of God, like the law of attraction and other things like that. So overnight I became a Christian, but it took a while to take the lies out that were planted for so long. And it's so hard because there's evidence for it. And I learned, along the way that demons have power too, and they'll do anything to trick you. And so I had to very slowly like pluck out the lies, I guess.
Do you have how did you find your success in doing that then? Like you said, it takes a long time and it can be very, very painful. How did you find your success and diverting your life again to Jesus?
Well, the Bible, obviously God's word, just the sword of the Spirit cuts up all the lies of the enemy. And also being in a community, I started going to church and had that. And I also found New Age to Jesus communities, people who were in the New Age like me, and then found Jesus. And I would ask questions, and they would give answers. So it was community and spending time with God in prayer and in the Word.
And so important. Community is just is incredibly important. Having solid relationships as they relate back to just a firm foundation in Jesus and what he stands for is in the truth that's found in the Word of God. Besides going to the Word itself and going to God, I don't think that there can. I think that is right up there with those other things, just right below them in terms of things that are helpful for people that have been in a situation like this. And another thing too, as it relates to your experience, is that you had. I'm not sure how quickly it was. I'm not sure if we're there yet in terms of the chronological side of it. But you relate in your testimony video that you had some changes that occurred as they relate to some of your behaviors. Can you kind of go into a little bit of that and how quickly did that happen?
Yeah. So while this was all happening, I was caught up in all kinds of sin, to put it bluntly, just straight up sin. I don't know how far I want to dive into it, but I was deep into addiction with many substances and money activities, and it was, detrimental to my life. And at that point, in the new age, it doesn't matter, there is no sin besides telling someone that they're wrong. And I knew those things were wrong, and I knew that if Jesus laid down his life, I can lay down my sin, not to be saved, but just to say thank you for saving me. And I gave up all those addictions, all partying, drugs, sex, porn, everything. I was lost. And then when that happened, it was pretty much immediate. Like I still, struggled. But I knew what I was doing was wrong, and within 2 months, everything was gone. Wow. All those old habits. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely incredible and just so powerful. And again, I think just speaks to the power that is found in Christ, because as someone, I've shared this before, and again, I'm not sure when that podcast will air, but as somebody who's getting their master's in counseling, in like secular counseling, a lot of the things that you're describing, it's by way of secular counseling. That takes a long time to change those behaviors. And all of a sudden you're talking about in a matter of a couple of months, you're seeing not one, not two, but several different addictive behaviors fall by the wayside. And there's another thing that you mentioned too, which I think is really powerful, which is that, and I think a lot of people, again, I think a lot of Christians take flack for this, is that a lot of people look at Christians as people that are quote giving things up to avoid maybe going to hell, and you made it clear that that's not why you were doing it. You were doing it as a way to say thank you in your relationship to Jesus, relationship with God, for everything that they've already given you, that you didn't deserve, that no one deserves, right. And you just wanted to just say thanks in that relational aspect, and that is so different. That is so different. I just want to really hit that point home, is that is so different from giving things up so you can avoid a fire eternity in hell. Of course, no one wants to go to hell. No one wants to do that, for a day, let alone for eternity. But that is because I can relate to what you're saying here, and as somebody that used to look at Christians that way, they're just trying to avoid hell. I just really want to emphasize that there is something more here. There's a relational aspect here that is at play, almost in the same way that you are maybe doing some kind of a compromise to a family member or a spouse or a friend. There's a relational aspect there that you're doing something to better that relationship, and you find out that those things anyway are they're not only hurting your relationship with the other person, or in this case Jesus, but they're hurting you. And that is so hard to know until you have that relationship with Jesus. But just all that revelation, I think that it all kind of comes together and fuels those differences, the life changes right there. And it's so much more powerful than something that's fear-based and just
Yeah.
trying to get you to change so you don't end up on the wrong side of the afterlife. So
Right.
just really again wanted to emphasize that.
Definitely.
So another thing that you mentioned as well that I thought was really powerful in your testimony was that you experienced two different kinds of loves throughout your spiritual journey. A very, very intense love in the New Age, but contrasted with the intense love that you have found in your relationship with Christ. Can you kind of go into what you think is the difference there?
Yeah. In the New Age, it was like I just took drugs. Like it was like very like euphoric but superficial, and I love everything equally, and everyone's right, and I love um it was just like very euphoric, and I love this tree, I love all of these plants, and I love this chicken, and just it was just very random blanket love for everything, but in a superficial way, like where I didn't actually care for them, but it's like it's very hard to explain, but it was just superficial and short term. It was very, one day I would hate everything, and the next day I'd be in love with everything. Like it was very, flip floppy and superficial. And then when I came to Christ, it was like it's deep. Like I care for souls. I care for your eternity. I care for so much more than, you know, how your day is. I care about how is your soul. I care about, of course, I care about how your day is, which anybody can do that, but it goes so much deeper than that. And I guess the best contrast you can give between New Age and Christianity is that Christianity's love is deeper. If I saw someone in a bad habit in the New Age, I wouldn't tell them to change it because I might offend them, because I might hurt their feelings. And their feelings and them being right is the number one truth, I guess, in New Age. And in Christianity, like, I cared for their soul. I didn't care so much about offending them if it would help them in the long term. And some people, that is disgusting to them, to tell people that they're wrong, even though in the long term it might help them. But when you really care for someone, you will tell them those hard things to say, and that was the main difference for me.
Yeah, well said. It makes me think about kind of my experience as well, and I've just always kind of related it to, like, if you have a couple of drinks, like let's say like you have like 2 or 3 beers and you're with a friend and they're having 2 or 3 beers, and you just start talking with each other, and that can be a powerful experience, and you feel good, but it's almost like there's a bit of an artificial experience there to the relationship, because you're both a little intoxicated. Not to say that that having a couple of beers with a friend is always a bad thing. I'm just saying that there's a different experience that you have there, as opposed to, let's say, now all of a sudden you look at it on the opposite side, and you have a really deep heart-to-heart conversation with a friend, where you both are really invested in each other's well-being, emotional, spiritual, whatever, well-being, and there's no substance behind it. You're just having this real heart-to-heart, and there's just a different feeling there. Like you said, it's a deeper feeling. The second experiences, and I really think that it plays to what you were saying as it relates to Christianity and New Age. It's just one of them. It just kind of just feels more just artificial and kind of gives into our flesh, and the other one is more of a spiritual and soul-based experience.
Exactly.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing what you've shared already in your story. And is there, I think this is kind of takes us to where you're at right now. And I think that I'm sure a lot of people would like to hear kind of, because I think this was a couple years ago. So what happened between a couple years ago and now, and just kind of what you're up to as it relates to your relationship with Christ now?
Yeah, it was about 2.5 years ago now. I've grown a lot, very at the very beginning, it was like I was holding on to a rocket ship. I was moving so fast, and growing and learning so many things. Now it's simmered down, and I'm growing slowly, and it's more like it's like a walk instead of a run with the Lord. Yeah, I'm still involved with church, still solid. Of course, I struggle with those things. I'm still a sinner. I still sin every day. I still mess up, but I always have God. I always can go back to God, and do go back to God, and um, I'm much more happy. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and at that time, and I haven't been on my meds in a long time, and I'm much better now. And
Wow.
yeah, lots of miracles are occurring.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it. So what would you then say to someone that they're listening to this and they're either in the same position that you are in, and maybe not necessarily as it relates to like the exact situation, like the event, but kind of into an alternate spirituality or the new age, or someone who was in it and they're still kind of experiencing that depression. They're trying to find their way back to Christ and just taking it day by day. What would you tell these people as it relates to your experience, and what could you tell them that could maybe be comforting for them?
Yeah. Well, first off, I understand that your experiences are real. I understand that you have these feelings and you've had these experiences and communication with spirits and supernatural things that seem real and good and loving, and they want to help you. But really, when you're talking to the spirit world, you just have to take their word for it. You don't know if they're telling the truth or not. You just have to say, okay, I'm going to choose to believe you. And they can be lying to you all the whole long way, and you won't know. So I highly encourage you to ponder the verse that says Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light. Ponder that. Pray to Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Ask him for help. Ask him for guidance. Because there's a lot of truth in New Age. It's powerful. There's a lot of truth in it, but it's a lot of half truths to lead you away from the truth, Jesus. I understand. I know where you're coming from, but if you're wrong and Jesus is the only way as he claims to be, Jesus was so different. You have to work your way to God in the New Age. You have to work your way to God in all religions. Jesus is the only one who came down to pay the fine for you. He comes to you. You can't earn your way to him. He comes to you. And salvation is not a gift. It is a gift. It's not something that you work for. So, and to Christians or people who've just come out of this and they're still struggling, find community, reach out to people, especially in real life people, like go to church, online community as well, people coming out of the same thing that we are. It's so helpful, so encouraging and comforting to have people that want to help and know what you're going through. I can't speak to say that God will take away everyone's depression when they become a Christian, because he won't. It's just it can be part of life. I still struggle with depression. I'm not depression free. I still have my days. I still sin. I still fall. But I know that I have God. I know that God is with me. I know that I go through these things to help other people out. I know that, not every tribulation is something to pray to go away, but to pray to God to show him why and how to get through it. So yeah, I think that's about it. Just find people, find God, pray, ponder the truth, and that's all I can say about it.
Well, beautifully said. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And again, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your story. I really appreciate it, and I'm just praying that it can help other people, as we've been talking about, that have been in a similar situation, and I know that it can. So just so thankful that you took the time to share your story with us today.
Yeah, my
And
pleasure.
yeah, and as it relates to your testimony, your original testimony video itself that I found, I'm going to go ahead and put up the name of your YouTube channel, which is Uncover the Truth, and that's where the video is at. And I'm not sure if you have any other videos that you're going to do down the line. Are you aware of kind of what you're going to do with a feature of that YouTube channel?
Yeah, I was thinking of doing, like the difference between Christ consciousness and what the Bible says about you don't have divine in you unless you have the Holy Spirit in you. And I just looked up if there were YouTube videos, and there's tons of YouTube videos of all the things that I already wanted to say, and they do it much better than I could. What's his name? Stephen Banchars.
Yeah,
he does a great job of
he does.
exposing Christ consciousness and Jesus is a mystic, and when he says you are God's, explaining the truth behind that, and all of those things that I wanted to hit have already been hit. So that's probably the only video that I'm ever gonna put out. It's a 17-minute short version, but
yeah, but still very powerful. And I think that if if you can go to that, besides this podcast, of course, if just sharing that testimony video in and of itself, it seems like I can tell it's gotten a lot of really good reaction over the last couple of years. And I've seen some of the comments, just so heartwarming to see how that has been able to help people. And people have been able to relate to that. Like you said, it's only 17 minutes, but it's very powerful. So, yeah. Well, awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners before we sign off?
No, thank you for watching, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again, Luke. I really appreciate it. And we will keep in touch.
Of course.
Well, that's the show for this week, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just a reminder, I need your story, your New Age to Christianity story, your near-death experience, your miracle healing, your interaction with an angel or a demon, or any other supernatural experience that strengthened your bond with God and with Christ. Please send them to me at spiritanswerspodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that's spiritanswerspodcast@gmail.com. Or we also have a Facebook group just called Spirit Answers. And if you don't want to share your story on the podcast, you can just share your supernatural experience or your testimony there. We would love to have you over there. And a reminder, we also have an audio-only version for those of you that don't want to be on video. When you share your story for the podcast, your episode will only feature audio if you don't want to be on camera. Also, please send me your prayer requests at spiritanswerspodcast@gmail.com, or if you'd like to submit them to the Spirit Answers group, feel free to do that as well. We would love to have them over there. And lastly, if you know anybody that is on a spiritual search or searching for truth or for meaning in life, please share this podcast with them. I would really appreciate that, and I hope that they would as well, just to use us as another resource in their journey. And maybe that person is you. Maybe you are the person who is on a spiritual journey, a spiritual quest for answers. And if that is you, I just would kindly ask you to do something simple. Just ask God to reveal himself to you by prayer. And I would just ask that you wouldn't give up, that you really truly ask him, for a period of time, and just see what happens. I really think that you'll be pleasantly pleased with the results, and I would love to hear the results of that as well. Just again, please don't give up, because he loves you. So that's it for this week, everybody. We will see you next week on the podcast. Have a great week. Bye.